Hey everyone, it's Aaron here from Rudy Visuals, and in today's video we're reviewing the Viltrox 35mm F1.8 lens for Sony E-mount, also available for Nikon mirrorless as well. Now we reviewed quite a few of these Viltrox lenses this past year, and so far they've mostly been great budget alternatives to their first party counterparts that offer a good performance to price ratio. So let's see if this Sony 35mm lens keeps up that reputation. Before we continue, a big thank you to Viltrox for sending us this lens for free to review. This is not a paid or sponsored review in any way. We were just sent this lens for free to review. And as always, all thoughts and opinions are fully independent. So just before we dive into the review, let's check out some photo and video samples, all taken with this lens matched up with our Sony a7 III and Sony a7R III. So what did you think of these samples? Let us know down there in the comment section below. And by the way, if you're new here, consider hitting that subscribe button to see more reviews, tutorials, and video content. Now, as always, let's start talking about the price, as of course, this is always going to affect our overall review, depending on how steep the damage to your wallet is going to be. Now, the Viltrox 35mm F1.8 will cost you about $399. That's about £348 here in the UK. And as expected, this is very much a budget-friendly option compared to other 35mm prime lenses on offer for Sony E-mount. The native Sony 35mm f1.8 is priced at about $748, so there's quite a huge price gap between these, and looking at other alternative 35s on the market, only the Samyang offers an alternative within this price bracket. So this definitely gives the Viltrox more appeal among more budget-minded buyers. Now, one area that the Viltrox does impress with is its general build quality. As is the case with a lot of these Viltrox lenses, you do get a nice compact and lightweight lens that weighs in at 370 grams with a smaller filter size of 55mm. The body and the mount of the lens are all made of metal and feel rugged and durable. However, there is no weather sealing, which we always like to have since we live in the UK, but at this price point, you know, it's not really that much of an issue. I wasn't really expecting it to have it, to be honest. It's a pretty simple lens design in terms of you just get a focusing ring and an aperture ring. The focusing ring feels nice and smooth, but the aperture ring can be a little bit scratchy as you twist it, and there are no sort of clicks between the apertures until you switch to the auto. There's the tiniest click, but it's enough to stop you moving it by accident. So overall for the price, it's like a 7 out of 10. It feels solid, but like on previous Viltrox lenses that we've tested, the lens hood is a little bit awkward. It doesn't always feel like it properly attaches, and it's a bit fiddly to put back on. It's also very plasticky. It's the same situation with the lens cap. Everything just feels a little bit cheap and plasticky. And of course you get the USB-C port on the mount for firmware updates, something that Viltrox has quite a good reputation and history of carrying out. Now, one thing you will like about this lens that I've enjoyed is just how versatile the focal length of 35mm is. It's not difficult to see why 35s are so popular. It's favored by so many photographers due to its moderately wide field of view that allows you to capture more of your scene. But the 35mm is still a good balance between being wide, but you know, not so wide that you get that kind of distortion that you'd associate with ultra wide angle lenses, but it's still tight enough that if you get in close enough, you can also still capture lots of nice details. So it makes a very nice, ideal sort of general all-purpose prime lens, you know, great for street travel, weddings, photojournalism, landscapes, cityscapes, pretty much all types of photography, 35mm can be useful. And despite not having any IS built into the lens, this also makes it a decent all-rounder for video work as well. 35mm is perfect for things like YouTube, product reviews. It's just about wide enough, I would say, for vlogging, B-roll, cinematics, that sort of thing. Yeah, very good focal length to use. Now, getting into the image quality, if we load up some of our testing samples here, you'll see that wide open at f1.8. Honestly, I was a little bit disappointed at how soft the center of the image looks. There is a noticeable lack of punch and contrast here, and if we go over to the corners, it is still fairly soft, but with a little improvement in the contrast. Stepping down to about f2.8, you get a really big improvement in the center of the frame, and over to our corners, we see an improvement too, but with some little bit of purple fringing going on. This continues to improve as we step down to f4, also down to f5.6, and then one more time down to f8. In these sample shots here, you'll also see the center sharpness comparisons at f1.8, f2.8, f4, f5.6, and also at f8. And you'll see how much it improves as we go up the aperture range. There is also a slight pincushion distortion to the overall images and also plenty of vignetting at f1.8. Here we have a winter photo and you'll see just how bad the vignetting can be, especially wide open here. If we load up some more of our samples, you'll see that while the images are decently sharp, nothing is particularly outstanding. It's not razor sharp. It hasn't got that tacked sharpness that I'd associate with more premium lenses. It's just not up to par with my expectations at f1.8. I mean, just eyeballing the images, you can kind of see that general lack of contrast in general. There's a lot of chromatic aberrations as well, which can be quite distracting. And the lens just didn't seem to handle any kind of like harsh or bright light very well at all, with lots of flaring and haziness going on. So for me, the image quality is a little disappointing compared to past Viltrox lenses. It's not terrible by any means, but just not anything remarkable. Autofocusing performance is also decent, but not amazing. So I'd say 9 out of 10 times it worked pretty well with our A7 III and the A7R III using IAF face detect as well as with spot focusing. It's reasonably snappy, but I found at times I encountered some weird issues, like it would just be a little bit slow to initially lock onto a face or an eye. Other times it would show the IAF icon highlighted, but then the image would focus somewhere else. And then looking back at the shot, it wasn't actually in focus, despite the camera telling me that it was. So I am hoping that this is something they can fix with a firmware update. Again, this is something that they have a good history of doing. Like I said before, 90% of the time it was perfectly fine, but that 10% was just enough for me to worry a little bit. I also found that in the manual focus mode when shooting video, as you go through the focusing range, you get this really distracting warping effect around the corners of your frame. So this will affect those of you who like to manual focus. All things considered, I say the overall optical performance is just below average for a lens of this price tag. So this leads me up nicely to my summary, and is this a lens that I think you should buy? I would say if you really need a 35mm lens and you don't need the best of the best image quality, then I think the Viltrox as well as the Samyang, they're both decent options. I'm certainly happy that there are options for budget-minded shooters at this price point. And as a kind of a stopgap lens, it'll do the job well enough until you can afford something a little bit more premium. But if you can afford to spend a little bit more, or you're happy to save for a bit longer, I've seen what the Sony and Sigma lenses, for example, are capable of. And despite being multiple times more expensive, honestly, you do get what you pay for in this instance, unfortunately. Not a terrible lens by any means, but just not a great lens. Anyway guys, that's gonna do it for this review. Let us know what you thought of the Viltrox lens. Is it something that you'd buy, and would you be willing to overlook some of its deficiencies? Let me know in the comment section below. Once again, a big thank you to Viltrox for sending us this lens and making this video possible. And if you found it useful, hit that like button, subscribe, and hit the bell notifications to see more updates. And as always, you can also follow us on the socials down here. And I guess, as always, I will see you on the next video. So thanks very much. Peace.